Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
Tiffany Canup enters a plea in her embezzlement case. Ocean City gears up for the Oceans Calling Festival this weekend. The struggles of one eastern Virginia county in reducing pollution into the Chesapeake Bay. We'll look at why so many companies decide to hide their business activities in Delaware. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. In our studio this afternoon is Coastal Point reporter Susan Canfora. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Don.
So we have this plea entered by Tiffany Canup in an embezzlement case involving the foundation that was set up to honor her son Gavin, who was killed in a hit-and-run accident. And I understand she didn't necessarily admit guilt. What's going on here?
No, Tiffany Canup, the mother of teenager Gavin Canup, who was killed by a hit-and-run driver near Ocean Pines almost 2 years ago, was in court this week on trial for 9 charges of theft and embezzlement from the Gavin Canup Foundation. Charges included that she made deposits intended for that foundation into her personal bank account and also used some of that money to pay her divorce lawyer. Although her lawyer, Thomas Moronic, in June called the charges completely bogus, Mrs. Canup was sentenced to 1 year of unsupervised probation and ordered to repay $6,500 to the Gavin Canup Foundation. She was told to resign from that foundation within 30 days. All money from the foundation must be donated to charity, and she may not decide which charities that money goes to. Mrs. Canup entered an Alford plea. That means she wasn't admitting guilt, but she acknowledged there was evidence against her in court. Her son was 14 when he was killed by a hit-and-run driver on Gray's Corner Road near Ocean Pines in July 2022. In April 2023, charges were brought against Tyler Malo of Berlin. He faces 17 charges, including failure to stop a vehicle at the scene of an accident involving death and failure to return or remain at the scene of an accident involving bodily injury. And his jury trial is scheduled for March 3rd next year.
And this case, by the way, has really stirred a lot of community interest. There were a lot of signs and so on. And to have such a prominent person as Tiffany plea to this, at least Alford agreement, does it, I assume, shock the community?
It has shocked the community. Everybody was surprised that she was brought to court, and her lawyer said that it couldn't possibly be true. But once she got in court, it was found that she had misappropriated some of that money, and it was paid back. In fact, the money she owed was paid back that morning in court before the trial even started, before the hearing even started. There are still signs up and down Coastal Highway all over West Ocean City, still bumper stickers on cars, still signs on marquees and restaurant signs supporting Gavin, justice for Gavin. So it has not gone away. People still want to see justice for the death of this young man.
So also, Susan, there are more woes for the owners of that container ship, the Dolly that struck the Francis Key Scott Bridge. I understand Maryland is now pressing its own lawsuit, charging the company had sent an unseaworthy vessel into U.S. waters.
That's what they're saying. The owner of the Dolly ship, the ship that hit the Key Bridge in Baltimore on March 26th, causing it to collapse and killing 6 people, is being sued by the state of Maryland. Federal lawsuits have been filed by a variety of entities from the U.S. Department of Justice, the city of Baltimore, the families of those who were killed, and now by the state of Maryland. The state is claiming the owner and manager of that ship, 984-foot ship that weighs 100,000 tons, exhibited reckless conduct, negligence, mismanagement, and incompetency. After the accident, boats couldn't use the waterway for months. Crews were busy clearing away wreckage from the Patapsco River. Until a new bridge is built, traffic will be heavier on Baltimore roads. In the lawsuit, the state of Maryland claims the ship had defects that had not been fixed and that the owner of the ship displayed mismanagement, disinterest, and incompetency. The lawsuit states many of the ship's backup systems were removed, inoperable, and/or intentionally overridden. And it states the ship and its anchors damaged submerged pipes and a water main owned by the city of Baltimore. The spokesman for the ship's owner, Grace Ocean Private Limited, and its manager, Synergy Marine, has commented on other lawsuits, saying they look forward to their day in court to set the record straight. A new bridge is being built. It's expected to cost about $1.7 billion and open in October 2028.
So, Susan, Purdue Foods LLC has been found in violation of its facility permit in Milford. I understand the alleged violations were discovered during a regular compliance inspection.
Yes, a notice of violation issued to Purdue Foods by the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control, known as DENREC, were followed by a written statement from Purdue saying their policies were already considered acceptable by DENREC. Those who spoke on behalf of Purdue said processes are being upgraded and new leadership is put in place, but in the notice of violation, DENREC said inspectors noticed incomplete documentation, inaccuracies, and mechanical failures in that plant. DENREC brought attention to those problems with keeping records of fuel oil deliveries and harmful chemicals used with a high sulfur content in the oil, and said that high sulfur content could pollute the air. Purdue is permitted to use only oil with a sulfur content of, at the most, 15 parts per million. DENREC said some records were not complete and failed to specify that sulfur content and also how the oil was tested. But Purdue says both the sulfur content and the record-keeping kerosene deliveries were acceptable. The DENREC spokesman said there won't be any penalties imposed or any fines because attention to the violation was only a first enforcement measure. Purdue is required to upgrade boilers every other year and to maintain records of when and how these upgrades are done. DENREC says inspectors noticed records concerning boilers, implied problems were corrected but not prevented. And DENREC wanted a more proactive approach. Purdue Foods is part of Purdue Farms, one of the largest poultry producing companies in the country. In Milford, it employs about 1,300 workers who process 250,000 chickens every day.
So finally, closer to home, we have in Milford, the town council has been getting some feedback when it comes to the homeless in the area. It also, I guess, involves at least 4 homeless people who had been on private property in the Willows area. They've since vacated that. And, of course, the police chief was giving the roundup. What do we hear from her?
There is some concern in Milford about the homeless population. Those who have nowhere to go sometimes sleep on benches or in cars or even just under trees. And residents of Milford are concerned about this because it's more and more noticeable. The police department has gotten involved. The police chief there, Cecilia Ash, said the police are committed to public safety for everyone, and that includes the homeless.
How does a community come together, and how does everybody stay in their lane to, make our city better, and also provide services for people who are struggling. And the Willows is an example of that, where it's brought to our attention. We address it as a government, and we try to get resources for those individuals, but also respect the property owner's wishes.
Police will enforce laws, she said, but they will also work with property owners and those in the business community to try to find a solution. Chief Ash said it's important that the police department doesn't get involved in politics, but concentrates on keeping the streets safe. She had this to say.
The big thing that we have to remember as a police department is that we are apolitical. We are not somebody's enforcement tool, and we have to be very careful in the lines that we tread as far as borderline harassing people who may choose or are not ready to get the help. All we can do as individuals and as a community is continue to support them when they need the support and know that we're there for them.
A local TV station talked to one homeless man in that area, and he said just finding a place to sleep is a daily struggle for him. Every day it's a struggle. He said just thinking about it brings tears to his eyes. With that in mind, Chief Ash said there has to be compassion. There has to be a more compassionate approach to this problem, and the community should focus on finding ways to help.
Also, talking about politics, the new allegations of tax issues for the Democrat Angela Alsobrooks, something that we've been seen exploited now in television ads by supporters of Republican nominee Larry Hogan in the race for Maryland Senate seat. What do we know so far?
Well, there's an advertisement circulating put out by a political action committee known as a PAC that supports former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, who is running for the U.S. Senate. And that ad says that his challenger, Angela Alsobrooks, received tax breaks on properties that she owns. In the ad, which was created by Maryland's Future, a narrator says, although the economy has been hard on our wallets, it hasn't been very hard on hers.
CNN reports she dodged at least $16,000 in property taxes, illegally taking tax deductions she didn't qualify for. She even took a benefit meant for low-income.
But also Brooks, who is the Prince George's County executive, has maintained she didn't even know about the tax credits on 2 homes she owns, but she'll certainly pay back what she owes. Those who handle her campaign were quick to respond and said her attorneys were working on making sure everything gets paid. Those who analyze these situations and who advise candidates are saying this really won't hurt her campaign because she was unaware, and immediately she said she will repay everything she owes. One analyst reasoned that a few $1,000s or spread over many years wouldn't even make a footnote in a textbook. Also, Brooks has a small lead over Hogan according to polls, but voters are much more familiar with Hogan's name since he was governor for 2 terms. Also in political news this week, there was a reported clash at the annual J. Miller Taw's Crab and Clam Bake in Crisfield. There was some contention between union members and Larry Hogan. Protesters encroached on the Somerset Republican Central Committee tent where they were not supposed to be, and somebody threw shells at the protesters. Hogan said the interaction is just toxic politics.
Also, we turn to, of course, Ocean's Calling. That festival is this weekend in Ocean City. It's expected to draw some large crowds. What do we expect from it? Looks like an expansion, actually, of, as I talked to Tom Perloza with the Ocean City, that this is just sort of part of an expansion of the number of activities and festivities that they're going to have.
It is. There's something there every weekend. There's always something. Ocean City is hosting 2 major concerts. Ocean Calling is this weekend, and Country Calling will be next weekend, October 4th and 5th. And Tom Perloza, Director of Tourism and Business Development for the town, is looking forward to this event.
It's going to be a great event to sell out 55,000 ticket holders in for 3 days. 50% of them have never been to Ocean City or Maryland, so we're excited to showcase the resort. Some great music and talent, and a good time. Hopefully bring them back here for a summer vacation.
Some big names are going to be in the resort for both concerts. Scheduled to perform at Ocean's Calling near the Ocean City Inlet are bands including Blink 182, the Beach Boys, the Dave Matthews Band, Counting Crows, Boys to Men, and Bare Naked Ladies. And workers have been busy down there on the sand, putting up seating and lights and scaffolding all week. The festival is sold out, and so is Country Calling. But those who have tickets will be entertained by some big names: Jelly Roll, Eric Church, Clint Black, Martina McBride, Dwight Yoakam, and even Tanya Tucker. The annual fall festival Sunfest that used to be in September on the Inlet has now been moved to later in the fall season, and this year it will be Thursday, October 24th until Sunday, October 27th. On stage will be a Meatloaf tribute band called All Revved Up, the Chris Sachs Band, Kaylee Clark, a Prince tribute band, and a tribute band singing the hits of Reba McEntire, Garth Brooks, and the Judds, as well as a tribute to Elvis. So a lot of music at Sunfest this year, and Sunfest also has tents filled with items like collars for your dog and jewelry and wind chimes and soaps, all kinds of things if you like to shop like I do. The 2024 Corvette Weekend will be November 7th to the 9th, hosted by the Free State Corvette Club Foundation. And the big holiday festival, Ocean City's Winterfest of Lights, opens on November 21st and continues until New Year's Eve at Northside Park on 125th Street in Ocean City.
And later in the program, we will talk to Tom Perloza. He's the Director of Tourism and Business Development for the resort about what's coming up. Also, of course, we had the 2nd annual Maryland Folk Festival that took place this past weekend. And, of course, there were some sights and sounds.
Thousands of music fans were at the Maryland Folk Festival in Salisbury this past weekend, enjoying 250 musicians, dancers, and craftspeople as they sang and entertained. The weather was pleasant all 3 days as the crowds walked around, greeting each other and sampling foods from the many food trucks.
We enjoy the music, the food, and seeing friends.
We are art enthusiasts ourselves, so we come for the art and to support local artists.
I like where the diversity, everybody comes out and it's different cultures.
I mean, there's a lot of things to do, and it's fun for the kids.
This was the 2nd Maryland Folk Festival in downtown Salisbury, and we can look forward to another one next year.
So you were down there. What did you do?
I put my feet in the water at the Unity Square. They have those beautiful big fountains of water shooting up, and it was so hot. I took my shoes off and splashed around a little bit with the kids, and I had some French fries, and I listened to 2 bands. Blind Wind was really interesting to me. That's a young man who's autistic and blind, who plays harmonica with his father, who plays guitar. The young man was just incredibly talented, and people were just clapping and taking pictures and videos of him. And there was a gospel music tent that I stopped at. Really good music. I saw a lot of people I knew, had a little something to eat, and there was a book sale at the library, which made it even nicer. I got to stop by and buy a few books at the library that day. So it was a good time.
So, I mean, any particular favorites? I mean, beyond the music, it was just, I mean, it wasn't too hot, I guess.
It wasn't too hot. I just like walking around, seeing the people and sampling some of the foods. I stopped at the Republican tent. I stopped at the Democratic tent, talked to some politicians, and it was just a very nice afternoon.
And also, I guess, in the traditional area, I mean, they had things like the oysters and the decoys, that kind of thing.
They did. I saw some of that. There were some things for sale. There were people in booths. I even stopped and bought a bottle of water for the man who was signing for the gospel group because he was so hot and he was like sweating and trying to wipe his face while he was signing. So I took him a bottle of cold water. So that was my good gesture for the year.
So you're going to go again?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't miss it.
You know, because it's interesting because, you know, we had the National Folk Festival for a number of years, I think about 4 or so, and now we've had a couple of them for Maryland, a bit more, I guess, downsized, I guess, but with a lot more emphasis, I guess, on Maryland itself.
It was a little smaller. Yeah, this year was more concentrated this year. It wasn't all over town like the first one was, but it was very nice. I remember the first one when Jake Day was mayor. Governor Hogan was here. They had a parade, and Governor Hogan marched in the parade. Everybody was so excited. A few times it's gotten rained out, but this year we had beautiful weather, and it was just a perfect weekend for it.
Well, we've been speaking with Susan Canfora. She's a reporter for Coastal Point. Appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
It's always a pleasure.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.